In the world's greatest country, in its most pivotal state, lies Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley, an economic hub that's as vibrant as it is ideologically eclectic. Its just over 700,000 residents will play a critical role in deciding the course of American leadership and thereby the world. Who are the thinkers, workers, and leaders that will decide our collective fate? Join me, Moshe Kurtz, as I walk through the valley and find out. Thank you, my friends, for joining me today as I walk through the valley with Dr. Philip Cavalier, the relatively newly minted 13th president of Kutztown University. Welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here with you.
Now, I want to give you, in the spirit of education, a pop quiz.
Okay.
Which is, I would love for you to tell our listeners, what is it that makes Kutztown University unique? We are blessed in the broader Lehigh Valley area to have many different institutions of higher learning. So what exactly is Kutztown's niche?
So Kutztown is obviously a public university, about 7,500, that feels like a small residential college. The residential life of this campus is remarkable. Students are all over campus all night long, whether it's on this side of campus practicing, for their musical instruments or in the art studios. There's a very, very rich programming that happens here. About 3,200 students live on campus. My experience previously at a public institution was that it was much more a drive to campus, drive home. This is a residential experience, and I think that's really important. Of course, Kutztown's very well known for education, and in particular arts education. We've placed a tremendous number of students to be teachers of art in this area and beyond. I think one of the couple of things that folks don't necessarily know about Kutztown is that we're very good at supporting students, helping students who may not think that college is for them, helping them see that it is and to thrive here. But we also have some incredible support programs for students who've been in the foster system. We have a program called Profs for those students, and they're in a cohort, they get a tremendous amount of support, and they're able to live on campus in the summer or during breaks. We also have an amazing program called My Place, which is for students who are on the spectrum. And there are different spaces on campus that they can use. There are different services that they are provided. So, a lot of institutions are good at helping students. I think Kutztown is very good at trying to figure out how to help the kinds of students who oftentimes just fall through the cracks.
I think that's a great point, because inclusivity is a buzzword that we hear used a lot by a lot of different educational institutions, but what you just told me actually backs up that terminology. And this is appropriate because just a few episodes ago on the podcast, we actually had on Janae Holtsafer, who runs the Kindness Project in Emmaus, which is a boutique that actually helps foster families.
Yeah.
So I didn't plan that thematic connection. I did not know that about Kutztown University, but I'd like to tell my listeners that this was all part of the plan originally. But I'm curious also, I'm in Allentown and I really enjoy driving 30 minutes west to get here. I started noticing that there was more green hills as I came closer. It's a little bit more what I imagined Pennsylvania looks like as I moved here. I drove down the main street. It looks very quaint, and I love Allentown as well, but it's a different flavor here. And coming from New York myself, and we'll talk about it in just a moment, I know that my wife went to Queens College. Great place, but it was a commuter campus like you described. Most people, they went there, they took their classes, and they went home. And cultivating a culture on campus is something that I can really appreciate as a native New Yorker. But I'm not the only native New Yorker in the room right now. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about 10-year-old Phil.
Sure.
Before we had President Cavalier, what was 10-year-old Phil like? And did he always imagine one day he'd be the president of a university in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, 10-year-old Phil could never have imagined anything like that. 10-year-old Phil could never have imagined spending 14 years as a chief academic officer before this role. None of those things, or being a faculty member. I think at that time, honestly, my dream job would have been to be a scorekeeper for the New York Mets. That would have been ideal.
Wait, a scorekeeper, not an actual baseball player.
No. I knew I couldn't play baseball, but I loved the Mets. I loved the New York Rangers. And I thought if I could do anything to be part of those organizations, around statistics, I mean, I was pretty naive. That would have been my dream job. I also never imagined anywhere through growing up that I'd ever leave New York City. Just
really.
And in the time since I graduated with my PhD, I've lived in Alabama, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Illinois.
Oh, so this is where we are now is a little bit less exotic than you had imagined. I mean, you're still back in the Northeast. I think we're considered Northeast still over here.
Yes, we are. Yes, and it had been 17 years since I'd lived in the North. No, it was more than that. It was probably closer to 25 now. Like they're 26. It's wonderful to be back. I went to school outside of Philadelphia, and I played sports against all these schools like Muhlenberg and Moravian when I was in college, and Millersville and Westchester and Franklin Marshall. So I grew up in college playing around and seeing this area. I think it's a beautiful area. But I'd also say, back to your point about community and what a college campus looks like, we're incredibly blessed to have a beautiful campus. Mm-hmm. We're also incredibly blessed to have a great relationship with the town that is right next to the university. And the number of students that I've seen over the last year who are going into town for all kinds of things. I mean, the town is busy with students. And that, I think, is part of the appeal, that there are things to do on campus, but you can also get downtown to restaurants and bookstores and things like that.
I really love that, and I'm going to out myself right now. I hope you don't kick me out of the building. I am on the Muhlenberg College Board of Associates.
Oh, okay.
I live in Allentown, and Muhlenberg is right next door to us. We actually have Jewish students who come on Saturday mornings for services.
Okay.
But something that I would love to see at Muhlenberg a little bit more, and other colleges with a similar setup, is students many times stay within the college bubble. And I think cultivating a unique culture on campus is important for the reasons you articulated as well. And at the same time, I would love if students got to learn about the broader community around them. And much to my chagrin, I see many times students that they're in Pennsylvania, they're in the Lehigh Valley for 4 years, they're getting their bachelor's degree, and now they need a job, and then they just go to another state.
Right.
And I would love if they could kind of see Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley, not just as a place to get an education, but a place to live as well.
Absolutely. Well,
so what you're doing is great.
Well, and I will say that the connection that the students have with the town is strong, and I do think it helps people feel like, hey, I could imagine staying in this area, whether it's as a teacher at one of the schools locally, or students who come from the area who think it's worth being around here. But on Halloween, we have an event in the town where 42 different organizations set up tables, and kids come and trick or treat. And you could say, well, they open up a card table and they throw a container of candy out. That's not at all what happened. There were all kinds of very elaborate themes that these groups put together. Everyone was involved. I mean, it was an amazing event where it's clear the students took their connection and their role in the community very, very seriously. And it was a wonderful thing to see. So I know that in Reading and in Allentown, there's a lot of conversation around how do you try and keep that talent. Mm-hmm. I think that the connection that the university has with the town helps. Doesn't guarantee that people will stay, but I think people fall in love with the university and the area.
Absolutely. It's definitely a step in the right direction. But I want to back up just again, because we talked about, 10-year-old Phil. I want to now go to young adult Phil. Before getting into the world of university education and leadership, you were on Wall Street for a little bit, right?
Yeah. So when my dad was, he worked on Wall Street my whole life, and I just figured, well, that's the obvious path. And I was fortunate enough to work at Moody's Investor Services, which was a bond rating agency at a time when a new financial instrument came into being, and it was very interesting. But what I realized after spending 4 years at Swarthmore College was that I was not going to be satisfied with spending my life trying to make money, and which doesn't mean I don't want to make money, but that was the path on Wall Street, to continue to work until you get big bonuses and bigger bonuses. And I found myself going to the library during my lunch hour to read, and reading a lot after work. And I had taken a lot of English courses in college, and it finally dawned on me, like, this is the thing I'm really passionate about. So that led me to apply to master's programs in English, with the idea that I would potentially go on to get a PhD. And I went to Northeastern in Boston and loved that experience. In fact, my mentor from Northeastern attended the inauguration a couple weeks ago, and it was an amazing moment 36 years later for us to be together. But yeah, so I will say this about the experience on Wall Street. I learned an incredible amount about how you look at budgets, how you think about finances, how you project future potential financial scenarios. And that has been extremely helpful in my administrative life.
Right. And that actually brings me to the next question, which is, I've noticed, and you could correct me if there's more nuance to it, broadly speaking, two different kind of models of how universities choose presidents. Some, it's kind of like you have a professor, and then the professor becomes a department chair. And I don't know all the specific university lingo, but they basically climb up the ladder and, hey, what do you know? One day, I guess they're the next step is to become president of the university. And obviously grossly oversimplifying things. And there's a different model, which I think is more reflective of yours, which is you're actually coming from outside of the university system, and you didn't immediately jump into the presidency, but you went through Wall Street, came into academia. I love the story about your passion for learning, sneaking out to go to the library, and obviously that's where your heart was at. But have you found transitioning from the business world into university world and kind of getting into that culture while there have been people who've been here for quite a while?
So I think going from Wall Street to graduate school was fairly easy, because I was able to say, okay, instead of being able to read for an hour or study for an hour, I can spend all my days doing that. That was great. I loved teaching once I got went into tenure track position and eventually got tenure. But what I'd say about the administrative piece is there are some cases where people, as you say, they move up from when they were assistant professors and over 40 years, 30 years become president. I think the advantage that I have, having been a provost at 3 different institutions and now coming to this one, and also being at both private and public institutions, is I've seen a lot of different ways that universities and colleges structure themselves, and I've been exposed to basically all of the pieces of a college or university, especially when I was at 2 private colleges, because the staff is smaller, and when you're provost, you are, I oversaw student affairs through a dean of students and in athletics through an athletic director. That was incredibly helpful for me. But I think sometimes folks who come up through one system know one system, and it makes it difficult to imagine doing something else.
Right. You're able to bring that fresh perspective, having been out there in the world.
That's right.
And what I actually loved was the way I kind of, thought about doing this interview was the Morning Call, which is the Lehigh Valley paper, syndicated a Reading Eagle article, which profiled, I'm like, wow, I got to meet this person. It basically, I love the picture on the front. It shows move-in day, and you're in your tie-dye t-shirt helping students move their things into the dormitory. And I just love that contrast. I imagine you wearing the suit and tie on Wall Street all buttoned up, and then you get to wear the tie-dye shirt and have that great, your personality comes out as you're helping the students in. Apparently also, I'm not a huge Instagram person. I'm told I'm supposed to be on Instagram, but basically, I'm already on Facebook. I have LinkedIn. I have Twitter/X. You know, like I have there's only so many social media things you can manage, but I understand that you have quite the account on Instagram. We could put that in the show description for more folks to follow it. And there was a picture of you in a Shaggy costume from Scooby-Doo. Are you a Scooby-Doo fan?
I like Scooby-Doo fine, but I'll tell you where that came from. So when I got to Kutztown, one of the important things for me was to get to know the students and to be present and to show them that I'm part of the community, not just in an office. The tie-dye shirt is a part of that. I didn't go out to move-in day to get pictures taken. I went out to move-in day to get to know some of the parents and students, and I feel particularly comfortable in a tie-dye. I thought, this is sort of a regular guy. So we figured out early on that it would be fun to go and do like donuts at the crosswalk, 9 o'clock in the morning in between classes, and bring donuts and give those to the students. At Halloween, we did that again, but the office dressed up as the Scooby-Doo characters. So we had Velma, Fred, Scooby, and Shaggy. So it was just really another way to try and have fun, be lighthearted, recognize that it was Halloween. That Instagram account, we started it with a video of me going to women's lacrosse practice. And I played goalie in college in lacrosse, and getting in the goal. And it was super fun, had a great time with the students. But it was also, I think, a great video because at one point I was moving around and I just like tripped and fell backwards, and a couple of the players like collapsed in laughter. Yeah, and I think that was a good jumping off point for that Instagram account, because the point is to show like I am comfortable making fun of myself. I like having fun. It has shown my interest in sports, getting to know students. And just, I think, like, okay, he's a guy. He falls down.
I think that's really important because, I mean, I think a university president I would love to see is someone who doesn't just come in when there's the big donors and doesn't just come in when I have to deliver a graduation speech. But, what I would love to see, I mean, it has been that many years since I was in college myself. What I love to see is someone who's actually present, who you see around, and doesn't have to be one of the guys per se, but someone you could actually talk to.
That's right. And that's the way I experienced college. I went to a smaller college, but having worked at smaller colleges and knowing how critical it was for the students to get to know me and just getting to know their students, I've wanted to do that. But I also will say this, there are folks who go into administration because they don't want to teach anymore. And I've never stopped wanting to teach. I've gone through an administrative career because there were things along the way I thought I could do, but I love working with students, and you never really know how you can help them, affect them just by being present. And so that's a big part of why I try to be out with the students, go to their events, eat down in one of the dining halls. It's this. I'm a part of their experience, and I want them to feel comfortable with me, feel like I'm competent, but also they can approach me.
Absolutely. Now, even though your passion, of course, is in teaching and getting to spend time, I'm sure, with the student body, you did become the president, and I imagine that means you have a vision for things that you would like to get done. Of course, you have 12 predecessors who built a foundation and have done amazing things to build the university to what it is today. But of course, you're going to put your own spin on things. So it's been about a year. What is the the year in review? What has been on your agenda? What's the unique spin that you're trying to put on Kutztown?
Yeah, I think one of the things I came in realizing is that there are opportunities for some programs that we could add that are critical in Lehigh Valley. So, for instance, we're going to be starting an engineering program. We have very strong physics program here that has an engineering physics concentration. But if you look at the LVEDC's data about the needs for bachelor level positions,
Lehigh Valley Development Corporation,
Lehigh Valley Economic Development, yes,
Economic Development,
their data shows that engineering degrees and nursing are the most sought after degrees right now. And here we are, Apache School, a low cost place with some great facilities and faculty who have engineering degrees. So that's the kind of thing we need to respond to. We're going to be looking at some agriculture programs because we're in an area that obviously high agriculture. So there's some of that. There's an opportunity for us, I think, to reach more students who are, let's say, place bound or place limited. If I'm an adult who has some credit, no degree, but I'm in Allentown working until 5 every night, the likelihood I'm going to come back to Kutztown after work for a couple of years is pretty low.
Right.
So we're looking at some space in Allentown, some space in Reading where we could do some degree completion programs and some other programs. But the point is that we're an access institution, and folks who are non-traditional students, we should be serving those students as well. And I guess the last thing I would say is we have an opportunity to enhance our support for students and support for academics on this campus through philanthropy. And so that has been a real focus, getting out with donors, working with our Kutztown University Foundation to really try and push for scholarships, push for other kinds of financial support for students, and figure out how can we name a college which would then provide us with opportunities for more programming, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're really just building upon the foundation, identifying opportunities to spread Kutztown more into the core areas of the Lehigh Valley.
Yes.
Now, this might be a controversial question, maybe the most controversial one, which is I've never quite figured out, I'm a New York transplant myself, so I never quite figured out if Kutztown is considered part of the Lehigh Valley or not. I know we're not in Lehigh County over here, but is it considered part of the valley?
So I think it is, and I think you would get different answers from other folks. I think over the last many years, we have not thought of ourselves as part of the Lehigh Valley. We're 7 miles from Lehigh County line. We serve a tremendous number of students in Schuylkill, Northampton, obviously Lehigh County. We have relationships with industry partners, who have interns in the Lehigh Valley. I think we need to be serving that. And if you think about the PASHE system, there is no institution that is in the Lehigh Valley. We are we are connected to the Lehigh Valley, and I think we're the institution that can serve. And PASHE brings certain things that other schools don't. Other schools bring things that we can't. But an institution that is, a very low cost alternative where you can live on campus and still not have $100,000 in debt when you're done. Those are some of the things we bring. And I think the Lehigh Valley benefits if they know we're here and if we're actively trying to be part of that community.
Well, absolutely. And I'm sure some folks listening from Lehigh Valley are now going to be checking out Kutztown.
I hope so.
But speaking about the, affordability that you brought up, one of the trends in universities in America, we're talking writ large on a national level right now, is that liberal arts has been pushed a little bit onto the sideline. Liberal arts departments at universities are being minimized. And I would just love to get your perspective on what you're seeing and what is the place of liberal arts at Kutztown?
So I see those things happening, and I understand the need to develop majors that are workforce relevant in a very one-to-one way. And so engineering is a perfect example of that. Education, perfect example of that. You take the courses, you finish the degree, and you go become an educator. One of the things that I think can be lost if that's all you do, yes, you may be a teacher for life, but if you decided to become a teacher at 19, it's possible at 32 that you don't want to be a teacher anymore. And if the only thing you have studied is how to be a teacher, what are your options after that? I think one of the things the liberal arts can do, aside from helping students understand creativity, how you express yourself, how you understand expression, those things, is give you a broader base of knowledge, understand different ways of knowing and thinking, which can allow you to change paths. I was fortunate to go to a liberal arts college. I was an economics major, but the way the curriculum was structured, I took 6 courses in English and actually 7 courses in psychology. I was able to go to grad school in a different area than I majored in because the curriculum was set up that way.
You had that versatility.
Yes. And I'd say one last thing on this, and I've said this publicly in several places. Yes, we want to set up our students for their first job, but we also need to be aware that we have to help them be ready for a third job that does not exist today. When I was in college, there was no such thing as a graphic designer, social media coordinator, all those kinds of things. I'm not saying we can predict it, but what are the things that students can learn that would allow them to adapt? And I think the liberal arts provides a lot of those things.
Absolutely. So I guess we got to now check artificial intelligence off the bingo card.
I think that's right. Well, no, but artificial intelligence, there's a good example of it. There's a lot that it can do, and you can be either very scared and say it's, I don't want to think about it, or you can try and engage in it. I think, the things that happen in the liberal arts, and it's not exclusively, but it happens, how to communicate, how to think critically, ethics of things, how do I shape my message? I mean, if you're working with AI and you want to get something out of it, you better be pretty good at what you put in as a request. So I think the liberal arts are critical in helping us navigate where we go with AI.
Absolutely. Now, I know that Teachers College is kind of at the core of Kutztown University. And again, this is kind of like a national challenge, but I would just love to hear your thoughts on it, which is in America in general, and maybe it's in other countries, I'm only just focusing on the United States, teachers are obviously essential. We don't need to make a case for that. We need teachers, right?
Right.
We have no schools without teachers, and then there's no education, and we don't have society. But the challenge is that, especially in public education, teachers, they don't make a lot, to be blunt.
Right.
And how is there anything that we could be doing that could encourage people to go into education, to become teachers, but also to make that career choice more sustainable? I don't imagine a single university can solve what is a systemic challenge on its own, but what are you seeing from your conversations with people who are considering the teaching path?
There's some people, a lot of students actually, that I've seen over the last, let's say 15 years, who just are passionate about, they want to go teach. And that's wonderful because you don't have to sell them. You don't have to say, well, we can't pay you more than this. They want to be in that world. And I think that's great. I don't think that builds out necessarily a much broader pool of teachers. And there are a lot of states that have serious teacher shortages, and they have to do things that allow them to get the courses taught, but maybe not with folks who've been through a teacher ed program, some other ways to do that. I think this gets back to the workforce development piece. If you go into teaching, you're not going into teaching for the money. You are maybe going into it in some ways for the life, the way that your summers work or whatever. But I think more likely, it's there's a purpose to it that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a danger, I think, that higher education is seen as something where purpose doesn't matter. That it's just, how do you become an engineer? And being an engineer is great. I'm not saying it isn't. But how do you make it clear that there are other things that aren't as clearly one-to-one like that, or that aren't about making money only?
It's a very utilitarian way of looking at education, meaning I invest money and I invest in a college education. It gives me a qualification. Now I can get a job and earn more money.
That's right.
So if I understand what you're saying, and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, which is there's a value to having a broader education, because it gives you more versatility in your job prospects, but I think some would argue that it makes you a more well-rounded individual as well.
Yes.
I don't bring religion too much on the podcast, but I am a rabbi, so I have to put it in somewhere. In Judaism, we have this thing, it's called Torah Lishma, which means studying the religion and studying all the intricacies of it, even if I don't exactly know how it's meaningful to me and meaningful to my day-to-day life, there is an inherent value in just educating ourselves and studying more and becoming more well-rounded, even if I can't necessarily draw the line from A to B, like I get the degree and now I get the job.
Right. And I would say that I think of this too in terms of vocation, but not in a religious way. Just feeling called to do something, feeling passionate to do something that is not based on some particular reward. And I think a lot of students struggle to find any kind of vocation, not a profession, but a vocation. And I know that for in my experience, it took me 4 years, 5 years after college to start to figure out what mine was. And no matter whether I've been a faculty member or an administrator, I feel blessed to be in this world, and I love working with students. That has never been something I've needed, certain salary to make me want to do. There's a book by a guy named Daniel Pink called Drive. And one of the argument he makes there is basically, it's not money that drives people to excel or to do things. It is this feeling that they're doing something that has a purpose. It's bigger than they are. And I think it's important to maintain that a university is a place to explore doing things that have a real purpose in your life.
Absolutely. Now, circling back to the Wall Street, it's not just about moving money from one mutual fund and one stock to another to see where I could get a higher yield. There's got to be something a little bit more to life than just that.
That's exactly it.
And that's a truest return on investment right there.
That's right.
So there's something else that's looming, and I think it varies from state to state, but it's something that I think, again, many colleges are worried about, which is apparently sociologists say we're hitting a demographic cliff, which I understand to mean that there simply will not be as many students in upcoming classes as there currently are, which means, I don't know if that means there's too many universities, too many departments at universities, but it seems there's going to be more of a supply of university than there is a demand by students.
Right.
So how are you thinking and preparing for the demographic cliff?
So, I mean, one way to think about it is to say, well, okay, we know that today X number of students are in 6th grade, and they're going to be in 12th grade in 6 years, and that number in 6th grade is lower than it was 10 years ago. Now, Lehigh Valley is fortunate because we've had huge growth so there may be transplants and that may be softened a little bit, but to simply say, we're going to have fewer seniors, so we're just going to double our market share. That's not going to work. There are a lot of students who don't go to college, and even with that demographic cliff, there are plenty of people to go around for these different institutions. But unless there's some magic that's going to move us from, let's say, 45% going to college to 80%, we're going to be in this situation where we're not going to be able to just recruit 18 to 24-year-olds. As I said earlier, we're an access institution, which means we're supposed to provide access to higher education and to education to as many people in the region as possible. And that means trying to make sure that people who have some credit, no degree, people who want to come back to college, people whose lives were disrupted when they came out of high school, couldn't go to college. How do we bring those folks back and help them get a degree? That, I think, is probably the best hope in my mind for Kutztown continuing to grow its enrollment while being 100% consistent with our mission.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because you have this unique angle and this niche of serving populations that are not being served elsewhere. You're pretty much set up for success in the future, God willing.
Absolutely.
Now, we are recording right now between primaries and midterms, and this is one of the podcasts I like to do where it's not with, again, I'm grateful for all the politicians that come on the podcast, and I'm not going to ask you to make any endorsements. Don't worry about it. But I am curious with the midterm elections coming up in November, are there any policies, whether it be on the federal level, on the state level, that you are looking at that may have an impact for your university? And I'll mention something. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Governor Shapiro, he kept allocations for higher education from the state relatively stagnant for the current upcoming budget. And I would love to just understand, how is that affecting your calculus?
Yeah. So the last year there was no increase in the appropriation, and that is what has been proposed by the legislature and the governor. So we have to work with what we have, and knowing that we also have collective bargaining agreements that have certain required increases. It's a challenge, and the legislature have way more requests, way more needs than we can fund, and they can fund, and I recognize that. I think the thing that we have to do as an institution is figure out, first of all, what is it that we need in order to be financially viable? And does that mean we have to backfill with more philanthropy? For instance, do we need to be more aggressive in getting grants of different kinds? Do we need to be more aggressive in pursuing some populations that we haven't had to in the past so that our enrollment stays? So I don't know where that will go. I think that Pennsylvania has recently been prior to the last year, very aggressive in increasing that appropriation. So we're at a slightly different point now. I think on the federal side, the policies around financial aid, they've been changing over time, but there are some that restrict what students can take and get federal financial aid to cover. And back to the liberal arts piece, I think variety and exploration are an important part of your college life. Right now, if a student is in a program, all of those courses related to it or related to graduation will be covered by federal financial aid. If the student says, I want to take 3 courses in something very different because I'm interested in this, unless you can make the case that it's connected to the program currently that's not eligible for federal financial aid, I'd love to see that reconsidered.
Right. We definitely want to value the holistic aspect of education.
That's right.
100%. Just a few fun questions before we conclude.
Yeah.
So when we kind of glossed over this, but when you were a college student, what would you say was your favorite course that you took?
So I took a course called Proust, Joyce, and Faulkner, 3 major novelists, 3 incredibly difficult novelists with a faculty member named Phil Weinstein. And that was the hardest course I've ever taken. And that was including all of grad school. But there was something about taking a course that required so much thought, and it was not reading easy stuff that required really thinking about it and moving slowly through it in a very different way than you might read a page turner, with a faculty member who had all of this under his control. I mean, just knew it cold. It blew me away. That is not to say, by the way, that I was his best student, but I always have remembered that course as sort of a model for what I think really rigorous education can look like.
That's great. And I know you said that you really love reading, and that's what you did during your free time when you weren't actually on the job at Wall Street. But when you're not reading and currently not doing something in an official presidential capacity, what do you love to do with your free time?
Yeah,
if you get any of that.
I do. I love sports, and I've been a New York Rangers fan since, my father took me in 1972 to my first game. That was when I was 5 years old. So you can do the math on my age, and have been passionate about them ever since. Right now, the Stanley Cup Finals are on, so I watch a lot of that. I enjoy watching football. But just to go back to the reading for a second, my reading patterns have changed. I don't read in my discipline as much anymore. But I think one of the things that has been really helpful in my administrative career is that I'm fascinated by a wide range of topics. And so I've gotten to know some disciplines through reading that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten to know if I had been more narrowly focused on just my discipline. And I think that's helped me as a provost, certainly as a president.
Absolutely. Well, since you are interested in sports, I hope you will go to an Iron Pigs game if you haven't had the chance yet.
I have not, and I would like to do that. Actually, I am throwing out the first pitch at an Iron Pigs game, I think later in this month.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah,
we just had Jewish Heritage Night recently, so I'm actually not a big sports person,
okay.
but once they were doing that, I know they do these Heritage Nights because then they're able to fill more seats, and
right.
I full well know what I was doing, but I'm more than happy to give them the business. It's a nice thing that they do.
Absolutely.
And I hope that first pitch goes well. I gotta work out that arm.
I gotta work on the arm, yes.
Final question. So July 4th is coming up. We have the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Yep. What does that mean to you, Dr. Cavalier, and what does that mean for higher education in America?
I see higher education as a place where people are able to explore a wide range of ideas, and I think that's only possible because we live in the United States. Now, there are other countries that have universities, don't get me wrong, but I think the freedom to explore and to understand things, we're blessed that people have protected that in all kinds of ways over our history, and I think it's an opportunity to reaffirm the things that matter the most, which are that you are free to explore, understand, reflect on, and also dissent from other people. I think those things are critical, and I hope that our students feel not only that they are learning about a particular topic and coming to a conclusion about it, but are willing to listen to the other side and to dissent where necessary.
That is an excellent message to conclude on. President Philip Cavalier, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you joining me as I walk through the valley. Thank you for joining me as I walk through the valley. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and subscribe to our show. If you have questions or would like to book a live recording or have a speaking request, please email rabbi@sonsofisrael.net. This is Moshe Kurtz. I look forward to having you join me next time as I walk through the valley.